On the day of my birthday banquet, my fiancé held me in his arms and, in front of everyone, confessed his deep affection to another woman in German. Wait a little longer for me, after the wedding, I'll marry you. He assumed I couldn't understand, smiling with a tenderness that was cruel. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my flesh, yet I kept a smile on my face. I waited for 3 months until our wedding day. When the officiant asked if I was willing to marry him, I picked up the microphone and said to him in flawless German, Heute, wünsche deiner Geliebten, die Schlampe und der Hund immer zusammenbleiben. He was stunned in an instant. The air at the wedding venue was filled with the cloying scent of lilies mixed with champagne. Crystal chandeliers refracted brilliant light, covering the entire banquet hall and illuminating the smiling faces of every guest. I wore a custom Vera Wang wedding gown, its skirt spreading like blooming clouds, layered upon the red carpet. My vision was slightly blurred under the veil, but I could clearly see the man standing opposite me, Ethan. My fiancé. Today, he looked impeccably handsome, his custom black tuxedo accentuating his tall posture, with a perfect, well-measured smile on his lips. He was gazing at me affectionately, his eyes brimming with love almost overflowing. Just like 3 months ago at my birthday banquet, when he held me with the same deep affection. With the same gaze, he looked at another woman in the crowd, Lily. In the German I knew so well, he made that filthy promise, wait a little longer for me, after the wedding, I'll marry you. He said it so naturally, so confidently. Confident that I, a well-bred lady majoring in business management, couldn't understand this language he prided himself on. He smiled with a gentleness that was cruel, as if I were a highly functional but soulless prop in his perfect life script. That day, all the world's clamor faded away from me, leaving only his German words, like an ice pick, repeatedly piercing my eardrums. I clenched my fists, sharp nails sinking deep into my palms, the subtle pain keeping me alert. On my face, I maintained a proper smile, even raising my glass cooperatively to accept everyone's blessings. I waited for 3 months. 90 days. 2,160 hours. Like the most patient hunter, I endured every minute and second, watching him bustle about for our wedding, discussing future plans with me, being affectionate toward me while sending soothing messages to Lily. Now, I had finally waited for this. Miss Iris, are you willing to marry the gentleman before you, Mr. Ethan, as your lawful husband? In good times or bad, in riches or poverty, in health or sickness, to love and respect him until death do you part. The officiant's impassioned voice echoed through the speakers across the venue, pulling me back from my cold memories. All eyes were on me, anticipating those words I do. Ethan's eyes were also filled with expectation, he even winked at me imperceptibly, carrying a sense of assured control. Facing his gaze, I took the microphone from the bridesmaid. The metal casing of the microphone was somewhat cool, perfectly countering the heat in my palms. I took a deep breath, the scent of lilies entering my nostrils, but I no longer felt its sweetness, only suffocation. I didn't look at the officiant but locked my gaze firmly on Ethan's face, watching his perfect mask that was about to shatter. Then, I smiled. Heute, wünsche deiner Geliebten, die Schlampe und der Hund immer zusammenbleiben. Today, I wish you and your lover that the bitch and the dog stay together forever. My voice carried through the microphone, clear, steady, and perfectly articulated, spreading throughout the entire banquet hall. Every German syllable was as standard as a textbook. The originally lively atmosphere in the venue froze in that instant. Under the champagne tower, the smiles on the guests' faces stiffened. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion and bewilderment. The guests from the German partners seated in the front VIP row switched from polite smiles to unmasked shock in an instant. They widened their eyes, whispered to each other, their gazes sweeping back and forth between Ethan and me like searchlights. At the center of the world, on the stage, the color drained from Ethan's face at a visible speed. His perfect smile first cracked, then turned to astonishment, and finally, extreme humiliation and anger flooded like a breached dam, washing away all his disguises. His face turned from red to white, then to ashen, like a cheap palette. Iris. Are you insane? He lowered his voice, squeezing the words through gritted teeth, the shock in his eyes quickly replaced by fury. He lunged toward me, trying to snatch the microphone from my hand, as if that could stop what I was about to say. A strong arm barred the way between us, holding him back firmly. It was my brother, Ryan. He had somehow come onto the stage, standing beside me with a face as dark as water, like an unbreakable mountain. "Ethan, what do you think you're doing?" Ryan's voice was ice cold. I completely ignored Ethan's loss of composure, just holding the microphone, shifting my gaze from him and slowly scanning every face below the stage. Finally, my gaze fell on a corner of the guest seats. Lily was sitting there, wearing a light purple gown very similar to the bridesmaids' dresses. At that moment, her face, always carrying innocence and fragility, was pale as paper. Under the probing, suspicious, and disdainful gazes around her, she fidgeted uneasily, her hands tightly clutching her skirt, wishing she could dig a hole and disappear on the spot. I looked at her, then turned my gaze back to Ethan. I switched back to Chinese, my voice not loud, but like a heavy hammer striking everyone's heart. "Don't understand?" Looking at his distorted face, I said clearly, word by word, "No problem, I'll make you understand slowly." "You crazy woman. What nonsense are you spouting?" Ethan's mother, the woman who had always been overly critical of me, finally reacted, lifting her skirt and rushing onto the stage. She pointed at my nose, trembling with anger. "What bad luck has befallen our Gu family to marry someone like you who doesn't know her place? On such an important occasion, are you deliberately trying to humiliate our family?" Ethan's father followed, his face livid, shouting toward my father, "Victor, this is the fine daughter you've raised. Today, she's disgraced both our families." Amid the chaos, my father stood up. He ignored the Gu family's roars, just walking steadily onto the stage and taking the microphone from my hand. My father's voice was as steady and resonant as ever, carrying an unquestionable authority. "My daughter has done nothing wrong." He surveyed the room, his gaze stern. "Everything that happened today is due to our Jiang family's poor hospitality. We apologize for the spectacle. This wedding is officially cancelled." With that, he placed the microphone heavily on the officiant's table, producing a muffled thud. I raised my hand and, with an almost calm, slow motion, pulled off the white veil from my head. That hazy layer symbolizing purity and beauty became a wad of cheap white cloth in my hand. I looked at it as if seeing my blinded, foolish love. Then, I casually tossed it to the ground, like discarding a nauseating piece of trash. Under the deathly silence of the venue and the gaze of countless eyes, I didn't glance at Ethan again. I straightened my back, linked arms with my father's solid one, and walked off the stage step by step with head held high, leaving this banquet hall that once held all my beautiful fantasies but now contained only filth and absurdity. I didn't look back. Behind me were Ethan's suppressed angry growls, his parents' furious curses, the guests' explosive discussions, and the massive commotion of a grand wedding collapsing into ruins. None of this concerned me anymore. Stepping out of the banquet hall, warm sunlight fell on my shoulders. The sea in my heart, frozen for 3 months, finally calmed completely. No anger, no sadness, only a cold anticipation for the impending storm. "Ethan, this is just the beginning." The next day, as expected, I was trending. The topic "bride insults groom in German at wedding site" climbed explosively, followed by a deep red explosive tag. Clicking in, videos of the chaotic wedding scene, guests' whispers, and various unverifiable insider stories flew everywhere. Public opinion, like an out-of-control wildfire, quickly engulfed me. Soon, Ethan's counterattack came. He accepted an exclusive interview with a mainstream financial media. In the video, he wore a simple white shirt, his hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, his handsome face full of fatigue and hurt. Facing the camera, his voice hoarse, he explained in a nearly pleading tone, "I think Iris is just under too much pressure. We both put in a lot for this wedding. Maybe there's some misunderstanding. We have feelings for each other, I love her very much." He spoke with genuine emotion, choking up several times, portraying the image of a perfect victim ruthlessly hurt by a deeply loved woman to perfection. His PR team was evidently very professional. As soon as the interview was out, the tide turned. Oh my God, Ethan is so pitiful, humiliated publicly, and still speaking for the woman. Does this Iris have some delusion? Mishearing words at her own birthday banquet and causing a scene at the wedding? Being a rich heiress doesn't make her superior. With such a temper, who would want her? Feel sorry for Ethan for 3 seconds. Upstairs, I've long thought she doesn't deserve our Ethan, a spendthrift airhead. How can she compare to Ethan, a self-made young talent? Ethan's paid trolls and personal fans, like hyenas smelling blood, frantically flooded my social media comments, attacking me with the most vicious language, portraying me as a bully who abuses power and turns love to hate, a crazy woman. Soon after, Lily took action. She posted an ambiguous update on her Weibo, with a photo of her silhouette reading by the window, evoking a sense of peaceful years. The innocent will be proven innocent, time will tell everything. I don't want to be dragged into disputes, I just hope everyone around me is well. Immediately below, a bunch of passers-by and insiders comforted her. Hug Lily, truly an undeserved calamity, being dragged in. I know you and Ethan are good friends, some people shouldn't be too sensitive. Sigh, truly gentle and kind people are always misunderstood, feel sorry for you. In harmony, inverting black and white. They painted me as the perpetrator, while they, one a devoted fiancé without regrets, the other an innocent implicated white moonlight. What a touching grand drama. Ding-ling-ling, an unfamiliar number called. I picked up, and from it came Ethan's familiar voice, now utterly disgusting to me. His tone was soft yet firm, with a condescending tolerance. Iris, stop making a fuss, okay? I know you're still angry, but with things like this, it's bad for both our families. Come out now and issue a statement saying it was a misunderstanding, that you misheard, and this matter is over. I promise I'll compensate you well later. Compensation? I almost laughed out loud. Did he think this was still a childish play fight, solvable with a candy? Did he think he destroyed only a wedding, while I destroyed only his face? He had no idea that what he shattered with his own hands was all my trust and love for him. And what I was about to destroy was everything he prided himself on. I said nothing, directly hung up the phone, then blocked this number and all contacts related to him. Brother Ryan beside me was furious, his face turning blue, picking up his phone to call. This bastard dares to play the victim first. Watch me get people to take down his crappy company. Bro, I stopped him, don't rush. Ryan looked at me, anger and heartache intertwined in his eyes. Iris, how long are you going to endure? They're about to trample you into the mud. I shook my head, gazing calmly out the window. Let him perform. The higher he stands now, the more perfectly public opinion elevates him, the harder he'll fall later. I needed him to continue being arrogant, to keep thinking I was just a temperamental love-struck fool. I needed him to build all the ladders, then I would personally kick them down. Ryan looked at my calm, almost cold gaze, stunned for a moment, finally putting down the phone. Okay, I'll listen to you. But if anything happens, bro's got your back. I nodded, a warm current flowing through my heart. In the afternoon, through the family's retained lawyer, I issued a concise public statement. In it, I mentioned nothing about emotional entanglements, no accusations, no defenses. Using the calmest, most formulaic language to state a fact, due to irreconcilable major principled issues with Mr. Ethan, I, Iris, hereby formally announce the dissolution of the engagement with Mr. Ethan. No explanations, no entanglements. This lofty disregard was more lethal than any fierce argument. It was like a silent slap across Ethan's carefully orchestrated public opinion field. After handling all this, I returned to my study. Opening the computer, the screen displayed all the materials I had compiled over countless sleepless nights in these 3 months. The most prominent was a huge organizational chart. At its center was Ethan's thriving tech company, HJ Tech. Looking at that familiar name on the screen, the corners of my mouth slowly curled into a cold smile. Ethan, your performance is over. Now, it's my turn. What Ethan valued most was his career. HJ Tech was proof of his self-made success, his greatest asset as a young talent, and the foundation of his confidence and control. To hurt him, I had to strike at what he was most proud of. For the first strike, I targeted the Nebula project. This was Ethan's lifeline project betting the company's next 3 years, a grand blueprint combining artificial intelligence and big data. For this project, he had invested almost all the company's preliminary R&D funds and liquidity, waiting for my father's Jian Group to inject massive investments after the wedding and provide support from our family's core data ports. It could be said that the success or failure of the Nebula project directly determined his company's survival. And this was originally the most valuable wedding gift I was giving him. Now, I would personally reclaim this gift and turn it into a blade piercing his heart. On the third day after the wedding farce, as the project leader of the Jian Group, I held a small-scale online media conference. No entertainment reporters were invited, only top tech and finance media in the industry attended. I changed into a sharp white suit, tied my long hair into a high ponytail, with refined yet sharp makeup. Facing the camera, I was no longer the gentle Miss Iris following behind Ethan. I was Iris. Good afternoon, media friends. This conference is held today to announce the Jian Group's latest strategic deployment in the artificial intelligence field. My voice was steady as I clearly outlined our judgments on the future tech market. Then, I dropped the first bombshell. Based on this, the Jian Group will independently launch a full upgrade of the Nebula Project, Nebula Project 2.0. We will invest $2 billion in funds and open core data support from all related industry chains under the group. As soon as these words were spoken, the online chat room exploded. Everyone knew the Nebula project was Ethan's. The Jian Group independently launching version 2.0? Wasn't this blatantly pulling the rug out from under him? Within 5 minutes of my announcement, the topic Jian Group snatches Nebula project overtook the previous wedding farce and rushed to the top of the finance section headlines. Ethan's company stock price began a cliff-like drop in response. But this wasn't over. Looking at the camera, I smiled and dropped the second, most fatal bomb. At the same time, I am very honored to announce to everyone that Nebula Project 2.0 will no longer be a solo battle for us. We have found a strategic partner with aligned ideals and strong capabilities. It is Qiming Tech. As soon as Qiming Tech was mentioned, the room erupted. Who in the industry didn't know that Qiming Tech's founder, Lucas, was Ethan's arch-rival since university days? Over the years, the two companies had fought tooth and nail in the market, irreconcilable. I not only snatched Ethan's project but handed it to his biggest enemy. This wasn't just pulling the rug, it was digging up his ancestors' graves and using the soil to build a new house for him and his nemesis. After the conference, my phone was bombarded with calls. I answered none. Half an hour later, the front desk downstairs called on the internal line, voice somewhat panicked. Iris, Mr. Ethan is here, insisting on rushing up to see you, security can barely hold him back. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked down. Ethan's flashy Maserati was parked at the company entrance. He himself was being held by 2 security guards, hair messy, suit jacket wrinkled, with no trace of the young talent's elegant demeanor. Like an enraged trapped beast, his face flushed, roaring something toward the building. I picked up the internal phone and calmly said to the front desk, "Let him up." A few minutes later, my office door was pushed open forcefully. Ethan rushed in panting heavily, eyes bloodshot, glaring at me fiercely. "Iris. What exactly do you want? Why are you doing this?" He roared, his voice filled with incredulous anger. "Do you know how important the Nebula project is to my company? That's our future." Our? I sat behind the wide desk, looking at his discomposed appearance amusingly. "Ethan, I think you're mistaken. Now, that's my future, and Qiming Tech's future. This is revenge. You're doing this to get back at me." He approached step by step, slamming his hands heavily on my desk, shaking the pens in the holder to jump. "Just because of the wedding? Just because of a joke? You want to ruin me? Iris, I didn't expect you to be so narrow-minded, so vicious." I laughed. It was a heartfelt laugh at the utter absurdity. I slowly stood up, facing him across the wide desk. Ethan, you seem not to have figured out the situation. First, this isn't revenge, it's a business decision. Your company, after losing the Jiang Group's support, has plummeting stock prices and ruined credibility. To me, it's now a high-risk investment. As the project leader, I have a duty to mitigate risks for my group. Looking at his increasingly ugly expression, I continued unhurriedly. Second, me vicious? I leaned forward, lowering my voice but with a chill. Ethan, at your birthday banquet, holding me but promising another woman marriage after the wedding, why didn't you think yourself vicious? When you used my family background and resources to pave your career, but secretly planned to kick me aside and marry your true love, why didn't you think yourself despicable? Adults must take responsibility for their actions. I stated clearly, word by word, when you said those German words, you should have anticipated this day. He was rendered speechless by me, his face turning from flushed to pale, his body trembling slightly from extreme anger. He probably never imagined that the me who was always gentle, considerate, and centered on him would say such sharp, merciless words. You. He eyed for a long time but couldn't say a word. I walked around the desk straight to the door. I'm going to sign with Chiming Tex Lucas. Ethan, help yourself. I left him trembling with anger in place, walking out of the office without looking back. Behind me came a loud crash of glass shattering. I guessed it was my crystal pen holder swept to the ground by him. It didn't matter. Just a pen holder. Shattered things couldn't be restored. Like trust, like love, like Ethan's future. The Nebula project being undercut was devastating to Ethan. His company's stock evaporated nearly 40% in just 3 days, investors withdrew funds one after another, banks started demanding loan repayments, and several previously agreed major clients switched to my Nebula Project 2.0. The capital chain broke. The company was in panic, with a resignation wave imminent. I thought he would admit defeat, apply for bankruptcy gracefully, and disappear from my world. But I underestimated his shamelessness. That night, I received an anonymous email. The sender's address was a string of meaningless gibberish. The email had no text, only a few photos. They were from when Ethan and I were passionately in love. Kissing by the sea, embracing under the snow mountains, and one, in a hotel room, me wearing his white shirt, leaning in his arms smiling brightly. The photos weren't overly explicit, but intimate enough to spark imagination. Looking at those photos that once represented sweetness, now they were like knives stained with filth, stabbing my eyes. My blood turned cold in an instant. Threatening me? Using our past relationship to threaten me? Staring at my unguarded, love-filled smiling face on the screen, a mix of disgust and rage surged from my stomach to my head. Did he really think I was still the woman he could manipulate at will, blinded by emotions? I didn't reply to the email but picked up my phone and directly dialed Ethan's private number, which I knew by heart. The phone rang for a long time before being answered. His voice carried subtle triumph and probing. Iris, you finally contacted me. The photos, did you send them? I got straight to the point, my voice cold without warmth. The other end was silent for a few seconds, then he chuckled lightly, his tone turning sinister. Iris, I didn't want to go this far. You forced me. Immediately stop suppressing me and return the Nebula project to me. Otherwise, I don't know where these photos might accidentally leak to. As a rich heiress, you wouldn't want to see these photos headlining major websites, right? Despicable. I squeezed out 2 words through gritted teeth. This is all what you taught me, he sneered. Business is like a battlefield, isn't it? To win, any means are acceptable. I took a deep breath, suppressing the churning anger in my chest. Extremely angry, I laughed instead. Fine. Let's meet. He seemed somewhat surprised but quickly agreed. That's more like it. You choose the place. He thought I had compromised. Let's go to the cafe where we had our first date. I said calmly. Ending it where we began couldn't be more fitting. Half an hour later, I arrived. Still that window seat, with the bustling street view outside. Ethan was already there, changed into a decent suit, hair restyled, seemingly trying to regain some past dignity. Seeing me, his face showed a triumphant, all-controlling expression. "Iris, I knew you still had me in your heart." He reached out to hold my hand. I sidestepped, gently pushing a black USB drive onto the table in front of him. "I came today to give you 2 gifts." He looked at the USB, frowning. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer but took out my phone, opened an audio file, and pressed play. Wort knock auf Michigan nach der Hochzeit heiratet dich. That familiar, clear German male voice flowed from the phone, echoing in the quiet corner of the cafe. It was exactly what he said to Lily at my birthday banquet. In the recording's background, one could even hear the guest chatter and my forced smile saying, "Thank you everyone." Clear and irrefutable. The triumph on Ethan's face froze instantly. He stared fixedly at my phone, the color draining from his face faster than at the wedding, leaving only ashen pallor. You recorded it?" His voice trembled, filled with fear. "Don't rush." I turned off the audio, put away the phone, and looked up at him. "There's a second gift." I opened my laptop that I carried with me, turning it toward him. On the screen were encrypted folders. I casually opened one, containing HJ Tech's financial statements for the past 3 years. Beside them were details I marked in red for every instance of tax evasion, inflated profits, and falsified accounts. Numbers, dates, handlers, all crystal clear. I opened another folder, containing several videos and recordings. The content was him and the company's CFO discussing how to embezzle company funds to cover his personal investment losses. These. He looked at the things on the screen, lips quivering, unable to say a word. I closed the laptop, leaned back in the chair, looking at him coldly. "Ethan, you probably forgot that before the wedding, you asked me to do a due diligence on your company's finances to better connect with the Jiang Group. I checked very carefully and, incidentally, discovered these interesting things. I originally thought, as long as you behaved, these would rot forever in my computer. I even naively thought to help patch these holes after marriage, letting you stand clean in the sunlight." I smiled self-mockingly. "I gave you the chance, you didn't want it." He slumped in the chair, eyes vacant, as if all strength and soul had been drained. "Threatening? With a few photos?" He was like a child with a toy gun trying to rob an armory. Looking at his complete breakdown, my heart was unmoved. I pushed the black USB drive toward him again. "Now, I give you 2 choices. A. Immediately hold a press conference, announce poor company management, apply for bankruptcy liquidation. Then, take your Lily and get out of this city, never appear again. B. I hand the contents of this USB, 1 copy to Economic Investigation, 1 to major media. Choose one." My voice was light, yet like a final judgment, each word smashing into his crown. He lifted his head, looking at me as if seeing a monster. "Iris, you're so ruthless." I laughed. "Thanks for the compliment. Isn't this all forced by you?" Ethan didn't choose immediately. He couldn't afford to gamble, but was even more unwilling. His pathetic pride made him unable to accept that everything he painstakingly built was destroyed like this, especially by the woman he once looked down on most. He began his final, futile struggle. He started pulling strings everywhere, finding friends, selling properties and luxury cars under his name, trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, filling the company's huge funding gaps. But it was too late. The walls had collapsed. Where were the east and west walls? The immense pressure like a mountain crushed his sanity and also crushed his seemingly unbreakable true love with Lily. Through some friends, I heard of their increasingly frequent arguments. "Ethan, can you do it or not? Didn't you say the company would soon overcome the crisis? My credit cards are all suspended. Where's the Hermes you promised me? The seaside villa you committed to? Now there's not even a shadow." Lily was no longer the gentle, considerate, non-competitive confidante. In the face of real interests, she finally tore off her mask, revealing her greedy and eager true face. She began questioning where the future Ethan promised her was. She even held a breakup vow Ethan had written to appease her. If he married me, he would compensate Lily $5 million, demanding immediate fulfillment. Overwhelmed Ethan, for the first time, lost his temper at his white moonlight. Can you be sensible? Don't you know my situation now? All you know is money, money, money. When Iris and I weren't divorced yet, why didn't you say these? It was said that day's argument was exceptionally intense. The two went from an envied fairy couple to a resentful pair mutually accusing and hating each other. Hearing this, my heart was unmoved, even finding it somewhat ridiculous. Without the filter of money and status, the so-called true love was so fragile. In desperation, Ethan did something even more laughable. He actually went downstairs to my family villa, standing in the heavy rain, refusing to leave. Trying to use this soap opera-style self-torture ploy to my parents' forgiveness. The butler called, tone full of difficulty. Mr. Ethan, he's outside in the rain, saying he won't leave until he sees you and the master. I was in the living room, applying a face mask while reading the latest finance magazine. I glanced at the pouring rain outside the window, my voice calm. Henry, call security, say someone is causing trouble in the community, disturbing residents' rest, have them escort him away. If he doesn't leave, call the police. I paused, adding, tell him his performance ended long ago, the audience has dispersed. Hanging up, I continued flipping through the magazine, as if I had just handled a trivial matter. Soon after, my brother Ryan's moments updated with a post. It was a short video, captioned, Annual Drama, The Downfall of the Phoenix Man, Touching Acting, Pity the Script is Too Bad. In the video, Ethan was held by two tall security guards, dragged away from my doorstep like a dead dog. Soaked through, hair messily plastered to his forehead, still shouting something unwillingly. I watched the video, smiled, and casually liked it. 2 days later, I received a call from a friend, tone full of gossipy excitement. Iris, guess who I saw? Lily. She's actually dining with that young master from the Chin family. They were chatting so warmly. I think she's seeing Ethan is done for and quickly finding a new backer. Listening, the smile on my lips deepened. How nice. One overwhelmed, the other seeking new branches. This eternal lover's ugliness was the best reward for my 3 months of endurance. Lily's actions were faster than I imagined. After confirming Ethan's ship was about to sink, she immediately chose to abandon ship and even wanted to salvage the last bit of value from this broken vessel. She proactively asked to meet me. The location was a high-end club's tea room, very private. She wore a plain white dress, with pitiful light makeup. As soon as she saw me, her eyes reddened. Miss Iris, I'm sorry. As she spoke, her voice carried a sob. I sat opposite her, picked up the teacup, gently blew on the floating tea leaves, said nothing, waiting for her to continue performing. I really didn't mean to. I've always seen Ethan as a senior. It was him. He kept deceiving me, saying his marriage to you was just a business alliance, with no feelings, that the one he truly loved was me. She accused tearfully, portraying herself as an ignorant girl blinded by love, deceived by a scumbag. I really didn't know things would turn out like this. Seeing his company in trouble, I'm more anxious than anyone. I know I was wrong, Miss Iris, I shouldn't have interfered in your relationship. I listened quietly to her clumsy acting, my heart unmoved. If I didn't clearly know how she boasted about the limited edition bags Ethan gave her while dining with my friends, how she mocked me, the legitimate fiancé, as a wooden beauty without romance, I might have believed her nonsense. Seeing me unmoved, she finally played her card. Miss Iris, I know Ethan did many excessive things to you. I have more of his unknown secrets in my hands. She took out a voice recorder from her bag and placed it on the table. In here, when he was drunk, how he boasted to me about using you, planning to gradually sideline your father in the Jiang group after marriage, and how he privately slandered you to friends, saying your personality is boring, just a stepping stone for his career. She lifted her head, eyes flashing with greed. I'll give all these to you. I want nothing, just ask Miss Iris to give me some money, let me leave this city, start a new life. For the rest of my life, I don't want to live in fear. So that's it. Using Ethan's dirt to exchange for her worry-free latter half of life. What a shrewd calculation. Looking at her, I finally spoke, voice faint. How much do you want? Her eyes lit up, tentatively extending 5 fingers. 5 million? I laughed. The breakup fee Ethan gave you was also this amount, right? It seems in your heart, his dirt and his love are equivalent. She was choked by me, her face somewhat ugly. I didn't agree on the spot but picked up the voice recorder. Let me listen to the stuff first. If it's worth it, money is no issue. I had her send the contents of the recorder, along with other so-called evidence, encrypted to my email. After getting the stuff, I didn't contact her again. Lily waited 2 days, not for my transfer, but for the media's bombardment. I didn't do it personally. I just anonymously sent those recordings and chat logs Lily gave me to a few self-media outlets that had grudges with Ethan and were best at digging deep scoops. At the same time, through another channel, I had my brother's friend casually reveal Lily's betraying for glory behavior to the already cornered Ethan. Ethan, you really care for your white moonlight. You know, she took your dirt to Iris, wanting to sell for 5 million. I couldn't imagine Ethan's mood upon hearing this news. When crushed by career and reality, that self-assumed pure true love became the last straw breaking him. He was stabbed most ruthlessly in the back by the woman he trusted and loved most. Media exposures came overwhelmingly. Ethan's devoted talent persona collapsed overnight. He was no longer the pitiful man hurt by a crazy woman but a scheming, emotion-manipulating top Phoenix man intent on swallowing his father-in-law's assets. In the recording, his line "A woman like Iris, marry her home as a vase decoration is fine, how can she compare to our Lily who understands romance" became a viral quote online. He suffered complete social death. And Lily didn't get the ending she wanted. She got not a penny, instead, her reputation was utterly ruined for selling out her lover. The upper circles couldn't tolerate a treacherous woman, and the ordinary people who once admired her saw her true, scheming mistress face. She became a rat everyone shouted to beat. The blessing I gave at the wedding finally came true. Bitch matches dog. Pity it couldn't last forever. They tore at each other in the fastest, ugliest way after interests collapsed, mutually destroying. Truly satisfying. Under the double blow of public opinion and betrayal, Ethan had become a walking corpse. His company was an empty shell, employees scattered, office besieged by debt-collecting suppliers. He was completely powerless. I didn't wait for his choice anymore. Because I had chosen for him. I met with lawyers at the Jiang Group's legal department, solemnly handing them the black USB along with a personally signed real name report letter. The rest is up to you. The legal team took the materials, expression serious. Miss Iris, rest assured, will follow through, ensure the evidence chain is complete, and let the criminal get the deserved punishment. The efficiency was astonishing. On the 3rd day, the Economic Investigation Department formed a task force, officially filing a case against HJ Tech. That afternoon, all company assets were sealed and frozen, all server data copied and taken. Ethan seemed to sense something. He tried to flee the country. However, the net of justice is wide. Just as he held a forged passport, preparing to pass through the airport VIP channel, he was intercepted on the spot by waiting police. His arrest scene was captured by staking reporters and quickly spread across the net. Under the flashes of cameras, the once spirited young talent now wore a wrinkled windbreaker, greasy hair, stubbly beard, looking haggard like a vagrant. On his wrists were cold handcuffs. As he was escorted into the police car, he seemed to see me in a nearby car through the crowd. I didn't dodge. Our gazes met in the air. His eyes were full of malice, unwillingness, anger, and an unfathomable despair and confusion he himself hadn't noticed. He seemed unable to understand why things turned out this way. I met his gaze calmly, my heart unmoved. For him, this was the beginning of hell. For me, it was just reclaiming justice. I rolled up the car window, blocking his last gaze that almost devoured me. The phone rang. It was my brother Ryan. "Iris, well done. Come home tonight, Dad stewed your favorite matsutake chicken soup." Brother's voice was unmasked satisfaction and indulgence. "Okay," I replied softly. The car drove smoothly away from the airport, leaving the commotion behind. I opened my phone and turned off all news notifications about Ethan. This storm I personally stirred up should end. Mine is family warmth and a bright future. His is cold iron bars and endless regret. Months later, I received a letter. The envelope had no stamp, only a prison postmark. Sender, Ethan. I was sitting in my new office, handling the latest quarterly report for Nebula Project 2.0. Sunlight poured through the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, warming and brightening the room. I opened the envelope. Inside were several sheets of letter paper, filled with dense writing. It was Ethan's handwriting, much messier than before, but still showing past sharpness. In the letter, no curses, no questions. It was all belated remorse and recollections of the past. He recalled our first meeting in the university library, sunlight just right, me in a white dress quietly reading. He recalled our first date, him nervous with sweaty palms, stumbling over words. He recalled our tough entrepreneurial times, sharing one bowl of instant noodles, yet finding it sweeter than any delicacy. He recalled the night he proposed, me crying like a child, nodding yes. He wrote a lot, style sincere, emotions genuine, as if the one who betrayed, schemed, and threatened me was just an illusion. At the letter's end, he wrote, "Iris, I know I was wrong. Blinded by ambition and greed, I lost the most precious thing in the world with my own hands. In the moment of losing you, I realized that so-called success and control are nothing compared to one real hug from you. I don't expect your forgiveness, I just hope you can visit me once, just once. Let me see you one more time after losing everything." I read the entire letter word by word, my face expressionless. Belated affection is cheaper than grass. These sweet words that once moved me now seemed only ironic. If my counterattack wasn't so thorough, if the Jiang family wasn't so powerful. At this moment, he should be holding Lily, living in the mansion obtained through me, driving the sports car I gave him, then at some drinking party, contemptuously mocking my stupidity and naivety as the ex-fiancé with friends. He didn't regret falling for someone else, he regretted choosing the wrong person, standing on the wrong side, losing utterly. His remorse wasn't because of love, but because of defeat. Holding those letter papers, I slowly walked to the fireplace in the office corner. In late autumn weather, the fireplace burned with warm flames. I let go, allowing those papers filled with deep affection to flutter into the flames. Blue flames instantly licked the papers, devouring the writing one by one. The papers curled, blackened, finally turning into a handful of insignificant ashes. Looking at those ashes, I felt the last trace of him in my heart dissipate. I no longer hated. Because he was no longer worthy. A prisoner's love and hate, what did it have to do with me? I poured all my energy into work. As the overall head of Nebula Project 2.0, I was no longer anyone's accessory, no longer the Miss Iris hiding behind a man's halo. I was Iris. This title was unfamiliar at first, but soon I loved it. It represented responsibility, capability, and most importantly, myself. I led the elite team jointly formed by Jiang and Qiming Tech, working day and night to overcome technical challenges and optimize algorithm models. The professional knowledge I once neglected for love was now picked up bit by bit, and with a broader platform, it erupted with astonishing energy. Deep down, I ultimately had my father's keenness and passion for business. At the project launch, I wore a tailored deep blue suit, standing under the spotlights, facing reporters and investors from around the world. I explained our technical advantages in fluent English, answered German reporters' questions in standard German, and chatted amiably with French partners in French. I was confident, composed, radiant. At that moment, I wasn't anyone's fiancé, anyone's daughter. I was just me, Iris. Chiming Tech CEO, Lucas, the man Ethan saw as his lifelong enemy, now as my partner, sat in the front row below the stage. His gaze toward me was filled with unmasked admiration. In public interviews, he said more than once to the media, "Iris is the most outstanding and visionary partner I've seen. Her abilities and charm deserve everyone's respect." The progress of Nebula Project 2.0 far exceeded everyone's expectations. The new generation AI interaction system we successfully developed caused a huge international sensation, with orders flying in like snowflakes. The company's stock soared, and I rose to fame in the industry, becoming the hottest new noble in the tech circle. Friends at gatherings marveled at my change. "Iris, you're glowing all over now." "Yeah, before I thought you were just a gentle lady, didn't expect you to be so dashing in business." I smiled, raising my glass. Before, it wasn't no light, the light was just covered by dark clouds. Now, the dark clouds have dispersed. I began to enjoy life anew. Outside work, I went to the gym, rock climbing, learned equestrianism, traveled around the world. My life finally belonged only to myself. I no longer needed another's affirmation to prove my worth. I once suffered from losing a wrong love, now realizing that when God closes a door, it's to open an entire world for you. Ethan's case officially went to trial half a year later. Due to the huge amounts involved and complex circumstances, it attracted widespread attention from all sectors. As a key witness, I had to attend. On the trial day, I wore a black professional suit and entered the solemn courtroom. The gallery was packed, flashes lit up the moment I appeared, quickly stopped by bailiffs. I sat in the witness stand, then saw him. Ethan. Wearing gray prison uniform, shaved head, thinner and more haggard than last seen at the airport. No color on his face, sunken eyes, like a stranger drained of all vitality. From the moment I entered the courtroom, his gaze stuck to me. That look was complex, malice, unwillingness, pleading, finally only complete dead silence. I ignored him. My gaze calmly swept over the judge, the jury, not lingering on him for even a second. The judge began questioning. I stated everything I knew logically and orderly. From how I incidentally discovered his company's financial issues, to how he conspired with the CFO to falsify accounts, to how he embezzled public funds. Every piece of evidence I submitted was like a nail, firmly pinning his crimes to the pillar of shame. As I described how he forged transactions and deceived investors, his once arrogantly held head slowly lowered. When I submitted the German recording from the birthday banquet in court as supplementary evidence of his character, he closed his eyes in pain. Throughout, I was like an emotionless robot, using the most objective, calm language to shovel the last dirt on his carefully woven empire of lies. Statement finished, I stepped down from the witness stand. My seat happened to pass the defendant's box. As we brushed past, he suddenly lifted his head, saying in a thread-like voice only we could hear, "I was wrong." My steps didn't stop, I didn't even spare him a glance from the corner of my eye. I walked straight out the courtroom doors. Afternoon sunlight hit me warmly, somewhat dazzling. I squinted, exhaling deeply. Everything was over. A year later, I represented the company at an international business banquet in Shanghai. The banquet ended near midnight. I politely declined several partners' invitations to continue. Walking out of the hotel alone, the driver was already waiting roadside. Early winter Shanghai, night wind carrying damp cold chill. I tightened my coat, about to get in the car, when my peripheral vision caught a familiar figure. On the roadside opposite the hotel, a woman was tugging with a slightly fat middle-aged man. The man seemed to want to shake her off, but she clung tightly to his sleeve, arguing loudly. The dim yellow streetlight hit her face, that once pure and fragile face now full of worldly fatigue and sharpness. It was Lily. She wore a cheap-looking pilling sweater, sloppy makeup, somewhat greasy hair. Her betraying for glory deeds had long spread in upper circles. No decent family was willing to take on such a notorious trouble. Her once proud youth and beauty, Without money support and white moonlight persona packaging, quickly depreciated, becoming worthless. She seemed to see me too. Saw my custom Chanel suit, the valuable Bentley behind me, the driver waiting aside respectfully opening the door for me. Her facial expression changed several times in an instant. From shock, to jealousy, to intense malice. She shoved the man beside her, like mad, ignoring the shuttling vehicles on the road, rushing toward me. Iris. She stood across the road, hysterically shouting at me. It's you. You ruined us. You vicious woman. You couldn't stand us being well. I ignored her ravings, just glancing at her faintly. Her life was doomed from the moment she chose to be the third party, to depend on men. It had nothing to do with me. I opened the car door, bent to sit in. Before getting in, across the road, I said my last words to her. The path is the one you chose yourself. The car door closed with a bang, completely isolating her shrill curses and distorted face from my world. Also isolating that unbearable, filthy past.